Salute, 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 salute. Shout out to my ATP Combat Media family. It's your boy Rain, by the way. Shout out to all my supporters, all the subscribers. If this is your first time, going ahead to see this content, I advise you go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Hit that subscribe button, hit your bell icon so you get an alert when all this content drops. I got a minute, in a door somewhere on Earth, getting unloaded. Have a minute. I wanted to expand a little bit. So there's a lot of talk going on right now about this whole entire Chris Eubanks Jr. and Terrence Crawford fight that supposedly are in negotiations and potentially trying to get lined up for the summertime coming up, right? And what's going on? People are upset. They're trying to figure out and they're trying to make sense of the whole entire, Terrence Crawford saying he wanted to make big prize fight, make the biggest fights possible before he went up. Before he left and went into into the sunset. And people are trying to wrap their mind around Chris Eubanks Jr. and what makes that fight such a big fight. Basically calling Terrence Crawford out on his hypocrisy, I guess they would say, saying that this cannot possibly be the biggest fight he can make right now. And I get it. I understand. We're in a space today where as boxing fans, we're not getting the fights we want to get. It doesn't make sense. As fans, I think all the promoters, the boxers included, know what fights their fans want to see them involved in. And it doesn't seem like there's any effort being put forward in putting these fights together. So when you look at a Terrence Crawford, for example, the first thing comes to your mind right now is either A, I wanted him to fight Errol Spence again, or B, the biggest one right now is probably you wanted to fight Boots Ennis, right? Who's currently the IBF welterweight champion right now, based off of belt being stripped from Terrence Crawford. And you want these fights to get put together, but at the same time, you have the fighters themselves who are also very concerned about how they're going to be compensated for these fights, especially fighters like Terrence Crawford, who are in a situation to where they're trying to line up their retirement, where they really have already earned the legacy they want to earn. Terrence Crawford's a two-time undisputed weight champion in two weight classes, two-time undisputed champion in two weight classes in the four-belt era. He's one of two men who have done it, and one of three people in total, including Clarissa Shields, who's done it as well for the women. So as far as legacy is concerned, those things just don't attract him like they used to. Fighting the fight to prove something, a fight that's going to prove who he is, type of narrative doesn't attract him because he feels like he's already proven who he is. He's already done enough, and I can subscribe to that. I feel like Terrence Crawford has cemented his legacy as far as what he's done for the sport of boxing, what he's done in boxing. I don't think there's too much more he can do to cement that legacy more, except for maybe fighting a Canelo Alvarez and becoming a three-weight class undisputed champion, right? And also against a fighter of Canelo Alvarez's caliber. So, I understand where he's coming from as well. And taking all that into consideration, coming off of the back end of a Francis Ngannou versus Anthony Joshua fight that happened in Saudi Arabia, what you're going to start seeing, and what I believe we're seeing right now, is you're starting to see the effect of a Turki Al-Sheikh in the game, right? Somebody who's willing to facilitate fights for these fighters and get them paid the most money they've ever gotten paid before, right? So where stateside wise, Chris Eubank Jr., it doesn't make any sense for Terrence Crawford to fight a Chris Eubank Jr. But we have to understand that outside the United States, and specifically in the UK, Chris Eubank Jr. happens to hold a lot of weight. His name holds a little bit more. He's a more celebrated fighter over there than over here. So Turki Al-Sheikh being affiliated with what's going on over there in the UK a lot probably sees Chris Eubank Jr. as a big fight to have in Saudi Arabia, especially if he's able to cross over and bring in American fighters such as Terrence Crawford's caliber, who's a pound for pound best fighter in the world, who has all of the accolades that he's put together over his years as being a fighter. He may be interested in putting a fight like that together, and that the history of Turki Al-Sheikh is, if he's involved, fighters stand to make the most money that they've ever made in their careers, right? So from Terrence Crawford's point of view and perspective on what boxes he needs checked to put together a fight, it would make sense if Turki Al-Sheikh was involved in it as to why he feels like that's a big fight with Chris Eubank Jr. You compound that with the fact that he's also hyper focused on fighting Canelo Alvarez, even though Canelo Alvarez has openly stated that he's not interested in fighting Terrence Crawford. He doesn't see anything for him out of fighting Terrence Crawford. How that fight, the victory over Terrence Crawford, would be tainted by accusations of Terrence Crawford being a little god coming up to 168, and how Canelo Alvarez was supposed to beat him. It doesn't do anything for him. He never said monetarily it wouldn't do anything for him, but ultimately it seems like he's pretty much made it clear as to why he wouldn't be interested in the fight, and hasn't shown any interest at all in the fight happening. But Terrence Crawford, of his own volition, feels like he can get that fight put together. He feels like money changes the mind of everybody. He feels like if there's enough money put behind that fight, and it puts Canelo Alvarez in a position to make one of the highest payments, or prize fights that he's ever been involved with, that he can get him to fight him in the ring. So you compound that with Terrence Crawford's ambitions to fight Canelo Alvarez at 168. It also helps him in the sense of putting him in a situation where he's beginning to acclimate to the higher weights, and it's putting him in position to potentially take advantage of an opportunity to fight Canelo Alvarez. So all those things have to be taken into consideration. Now, how do I feel about a fight between Chris Eubanks Jr. and Terrence Crawford? Well, listen, man, I think when it's all said and done, I think it's going to be a pretty good fight, because we still have to admit and understand that Terrence Crawford's still moving up 2 weight classes, right, to fight Chris Eubank Jr. And anybody who has aspirations of seeing Terrence Crawford fight Canelo Alvarez, this is a step in the right direction as far as getting him acclimated to the higher weights. I don't see anything wrong with it. If he stands to make a king's ransom, a king's ransom on this fight, making a lot of money on it, it makes sense to me as to why he would do it. And of course, I'd watch it. I don't know how many people stateside would just not watch it just off the strength of being rebellious, right, and protest to not watch the fight. But yeah, I would definitely watch the fight. Is it the fight I wanted? No. Listen, man. Across the table, if you're a boxing fan, I think all boxing fans ultimately want to see Terrence Crawford fight Boots Ennis. I think entertainment-wise, as far as how competitive it would be, when you look at the pedigree and the way that Boots Ennis fights, and you compare that to Terrence Crawford's pedigree and the way he fights, that is lined up to be a great fight, one of the best fights that we could see. Probably the fight that we thought we'd see between Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford. It'd be the fight that we would see between Terrence Crawford and Boots Ennis, because the Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence fight just really wasn't competitive. Terrence Crawford really just overwhelmed him. It was just a one-sided dominant ass whooping. We thought we'd see a 50-50 fight, to where we'd see a lot of back and forth going on, and see a way more competitive fight than we did. That's probably what we would get with a Boots Ennis Terrence Crawford. But ultimately, we have to factor in, and I know as a fan, I don't like to talk about boxers' money because I don't spend it with them, so I don't care how they make it. But when you have a fighter like Terrence Crawford, who's made it clear that, listen, it has to offer me the financial the financial reward that I want in order to put a fight like that together, then you have to factor in that, all right, well, if you want to see that fight happen between Boots Ennis and Terrence Crawford, then yeah, we need to see where the money's coming from to make sense of that. As far as the whole narrative that Terrence Crawford is ducking Boots Ennis, listen, to each their own. I don't subscribe to that idea. I don't think you get to the level that Terrence Crawford's gotten to by ducking fighters. Ducking is a word that's used very loosely today. It's used very loosely. I don't think that's the case. I think at the end of the day, the best way to prove as to whether or not Terrence Crawford is scared or ducking Boots Ennis is to get him the money he's asking for. You get him the money he's asking for, and you find the guy who's going to put the money behind. And if Terrence Crawford refuses to fight it at that point, that helps your argument a little bit more. But ultimately, right now, at this moment, I see nothing for me to go ahead and co-sign any type of ducking accusations. That's not, I don't think, what the case or the factor is in this situation. I think it's just bad timing. I think Terrence Crawford has earned himself the right to, fight who he wants to fight on his way out the door. I see nothing wrong with him looking to make as much money as he can. Those who understand will. Those who don't probably weren't going to understand anyway. And I'm sure Terrence Crawford is well aware of that idea of what I'm saying right there. So he's not considering anybody calling him a duck a reason to go prove himself not a duck and go fight Boots Ennis. That's not what it's going to be. Ultimately, at the end of the day, he's been inactive since July of last year when he fought Errol Spence due to his entanglement with a rematch clause that he signed and agreed to with Errol Spence. And it turns out Errol couldn't, you know, doesn't seem like he's able to put himself together in any kind of timely fashion to make that fight happen. So it seems like Terrence Crawford has pretty much removed himself legally, is not required to wait any longer, and he's able to go ahead and coordinate something else. He's trying to get active. Activity is killing a lot of these fighters. You know, we got to remember that. And if he's looking to make a fight right now, and you look at the options out there, when you're talking about the Tim Tszus, when you're talking about the Jamel Charlos, and all the other fights that you guys might be interested in him being involved with that could get him the money he wants. Now you have to look at cross promotional situations, right? Because he's no longer part of the PBC. He's a free agent and very well may want to remain a free agent. Doesn't want to have to sign to the PBC for X amount of fights, especially when he's looking to retire soon. That might be one of the reasons. When you look at Turkey Al-Sheikh, one of the big things that he brings to the table is that you don't have to be signed to any promotional company for years of fighting. And he's also very good at facilitating fights as far as cross promotions are concerned. You look at the history of the PBC, Top Rank, Golden Boy. It doesn't seem like they're that excited. There's a little resistance there right now still as far as allowing their fighters to go over and perform in Saudi Arabia to let their fighters get as much money as they can. I'm not saying they're dead set against it, but it looks like they, out of the promotional companies, United States promotional platforms seem to kind of be more concerned of keeping their fight stateside. So it's difficult to negotiate with these guys right now. Plus, Tim Tszyu is tied up with a fight with Keith Thurman coming at the end of March. And when you look at Jamel Charlo, he's been missing in action forever, coming off a horrible performance with Canelo Alvarez. That incentive that Terrence Crawford had to fight Jamel Charlo pretty much went up in smoke at that point. Jamel Charlo's allowed all his belts to be stripped from him pretty much. He's coming off a horrible performance. He's not going to be, Terrence Crawford's not doing cartwheels trying to get in the ring with Jamel Charlo. So in the spirit of being active and also in the spirit of getting himself ready and acclimated to the bigger weight classes to potentially get a fight with a Canelo Alvarez, it makes sense that he would make a fight like this with Chris Eubank Jr., somebody with a little bit of notoriety, and obviously somebody with money is interested in helping to facilitate that fight. So at the end of the day, it is what it is, right? I have no problems with the fight. I think it's going to be a competitive fight. Terrence Crawford's going up 2 weight classes. Let's see what happens with it, and let's see, in hindsight, after when it's all said and done, if Terrence Crawford is able to get a fight with Canelo Alvarez or make a fight like that happen, it probably wouldn't if he didn't take these steps that he's taking. He's also potentially building a relationship with Turkey Al-Sheikh, beginning that whole entire process, right, of opening the doors and just starting to get some business going on so they can do some more business in the future. We don't know at the end of the day where these things are going to lead to. But what do I feel about it? I have no problem at all with Terrence Crawford fighting Chris Eubanks Jr. He's put himself in a situation where he can get money, to where he's built some value in his name. Why not take advantage of it? The one thing, like I said before, and I'll say it again, is as far as those belts are concerned, I think it's important that Terrence Crawford really takes a consideration into vacating those belts. There's no reason to hold on to those belts, and at this point, you might be building a little bit of animosity in the game, because whatever you want to say, as far as the game treating Terrence Crawford, however Terrence Crawford feels like the game is treating him, he's still always been an honorable fighter. Somebody who's looked upon look, man, he's always been trying to fight the best. You got to respect his journey. But him holding on to the belts, it's not, fighting at 160 pounds, holding on to 3 belts from the welterweight division, that would look a little bit petty. I think that's kind of anti boxing fan, and I don't know if you want to make enemies out of your boxing fans. You know what I'm saying? You may have issues with boxers and promotional companies, but as far as the boxing fans are concerned, holding up a division is a sure certified way to build the animosity on that side of the fence. And I don't see any reason why you should do that. Why he would, he doesn't need to do that. He can vacate those belts, go onto his path on making the biggest fights, and still have the respect that came with him holding those belts. But that's just my personal opinion on it. You guys let me know what you think. I mean, is it that serious? Chris Eubank Jr., Terrence Crawford. Are you guys completely turned off from this fight? Are you guys going to protest and not buy this fight? You know what I'm saying? Tell me what you think. You know what I mean? And also about Turkey Al Sheikh. I'm really interested in seeing what the fan base, the boxing fan base, feels about Turkey Al Sheikh. Are they happy about his presence? Or are they feeling a little resentment about his presence? How would you feel to see some of your favorite fights happen over in Saudi Arabia? I know a lot of people want to see certain fights stay in the United States, but if they can't happen, it doesn't look like they're going to happen in the U.S. Do you have an issue with them happening in Saudi Arabia? All those things, right? But at the end of the day, boxing first. Shout out to my ATP Combat Media family, subscribers. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. Hit that bell icon so you get alerts when all this content is dropping. But on that note, we out.